while they're coming down, why don't we just start the end with Chris? We'll just do a quick introduction on who you are and kind of what your experience is, and we'll just work down the way. While they're doing that, everyone start thinking of questions, and we'll just make this an open forum.
Good morning, I'm Chris. I was an Air Force pilot. Don't hold that against me. I flew the strike thing. I was in for almost 25 years until I had an epiphany one day and decided to transition to the airline. So I work at United now. I've been here for about 4 years.
My name is Charlie Venema. I am a civilian background. My story is right place, right time. Started on the ramp, cleated toilets on overnighting airplanes. And I'm a 29, well, let's see, the 13th will be 29 years with Continental Union. I run checkedandset.net. So many of you I know have been clients. And if you've got questions for that, I'm giving a brief this afternoon, but I'll also be outside and happy to talk to you.
Morning, everyone. JC. And by the way, today I'm not allowed to drink from any open container, so if you see me walking around with a tight lid, thermos. Yeah, former tanker guy by trade, so that's how I know the network. Been a member for a while, and it's amazing. I remember being right there in that same situation, and really, the number one reason why I'm here is because of the assistance and the push that it gave me, and lucky enough to transition right away from Air Force with a small gap to Delta. And I guess what I can offer is being with Delta, I didn't think I'd do anything else besides just flying for a while, and about a year and a half into it, got sucked into what I really like to do in the Air Force, which is some safety work and standards work as well. So again, go ahead and grab me anytime, and I'll be more than happy to fill you in on how that goes.
My name is Nadia, and I'm on the civilian side. I've tried a couple things, from working for just private owners, Part 91, to working for a corporate flight department, or flying with pilot owners. Each has its own advantages and disadvantages, but it's been a fun ride.
Why don't you choose this one? Hi, I'm Stanley. I'm with ForeFlight. Been with the company about 8 years. I'm not military, but I spend virtually all of my day talking with military people and federal government. I'm also a part-time 135 Cessna 2A Caravan pilot. I fly cargo, so I'm a freight dog, as they call them, and that's me.
Morning, I'm Dan Medina. I'm American for 4 years. I fly the Scare Bus. And then I'm the chief pilot over here at the 63rd out of Tampa. 17 years in the military, 13 active, 4 I got lucky and transitioned to the reserves. So Orlando's local, so if you guys have any questions, let me know. And I'm also a real estate agent on the side.
Good morning, y'all. I'm Jessica Gardner, Southwest Airlines. Been there about 13 years. Prior Navy, spent 11 or 12 years active duty S3s, T-45s, and then another 10 years or so in the reserves, flying C-40s. 13 years at Southwest, currently a captain now in Orlando, and also part of the interview team with Mike Bautista over there. You'll meet him here in a few minutes. Happy to answer any questions if you have them.
I've got my own. Mr. Young. Good morning, I'm Mark Himmelhoff. Did 20-year Air Force career, retired, did the full thing there, fighter background, and transitioned out to the airlines. Had an interesting path to that you'll get to hear about later. And Southwest Airlines now, FO for 3.5 years, but domiciled in Dallas. Any questions on that? Happy to talk about that. Happy to talk about me. Love talking about me. Yeah, it must be. Also the author of Cockpit to Cockpit, and my beautiful wife Missy Shorey with me today. Copious good notes over there and tweeting out like crazy, our fabulous PR phenomenon.
Hi, I'm Shannon Callan. I am a tanker pilot at McDill, formerly an ART, and now I am a traditional reservist and a stay-at-home mom. Also, my husband is a military pilot and a United pilot, so I've got some perspective from the spouse side as well, if you guys have any questions about that.
And my name is Bob Ryan. I'm kind of the end of the rainbow here. I've gone from where you were 40 years ago. Let's see, been a pilot all my life, learned how to fly when I was 17 years old. Went through the Air Force, spent 7 years on active duty, and got out and went to this little airline in Dallas called Southwest Airlines. And had 20 airplanes and 200 pilots. I spent 35 glorious years here, from watching the whole thing go from 200 with not even a ground speed indicator all the way up to R&P airline full up near International. But it was a fun ride. I've been retired for a year and a half. This is my little girl here at the base over in MacDill. Very proud of her, and my son-in-law with United. And Matt asked me to come and just kind of be here and answer questions and just share the whole perspective of the airline career and getting out of the military and everything. So I'll be willing to answer any questions. And thank you very much, Matt, for inviting me.
So, all right, I have two questions. I'll start off. We're going to start, now, one's like totally loaded, but, so we're going to start, if everybody can raise their hands, all the pilots up here, if you guys don't mind raising your hands. It's kind of dorky, like everybody just put your hand in there. How many of you have, keep them raised until I hit the number and then put them down. How many of you have one type rating? 2, 3.
I have a question for you. PIC or SIC?
Doesn't matter, just type rating. So 3 type ratings. So 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, so yeah. So all right. So and I didn't want to do like military airplanes don't the KC-135 doesn't really count. That's all I have. I don't have as many as Charlie, but I have more than Shannon. So the point is I hear this question, and I'm sure our folks from Southwest and anybody who actually flies airplanes at all who's gotten to the airlines here's a question like, well, if I get this type rating, that'll help. Like, type ratings are great and all, but it doesn't mean that much. Like, it's not that important. Southwest used to have the requirement for a 737 type rating, and they've since dropped that requirement. So if Southwest, who flies 737s, hasn't deemed that to be like this hypercritical thing, you shouldn't worry about it either. Type ratings are awesome, and I love looking at my license and seeing that I have a 747 Airbus 330 and a Beech 1900 type rating all next to each other. But it's not that important. Like, the whole person concept is really critical as you move forward in anything that you're going to do. JC nailed it. Flying for the airline is awesome, but then you go and get to do some other really cool stuff. I do some union work too, and it's like, makes my day. And I know that sounds like ridiculous, but it really makes my day. I really do enjoy it. All right, so the second question is for our junior of pilots up here. Can you tell some folks, so I remember when I first got to the reserves, I didn't know what any acronyms meant on the reserves, and you used one, ART, and I think if I would have heard that 10, 12 years ago, I thought, wow, she paints, that's cool, like, it's awesome. I want to get paid to paint. So can you kind of explain what the ART program is in the reserves?
Sure. I still don't know a lot of the acronyms. But ART is an Air Reserve Technician. It's basically you're working as a civilian for your squadron. You're employed by the government, but you're not working in the military format. Although, when you work as an ART for Air Force Squadron, you do have to wear a uniform. So it is very confusing to explain to friends and family, but basically you're employed by your squadron and you're just working on a GS scale instead of by mil pay. I really enjoyed being an ART on some days, and other days I hated it. I think that there's pros and cons. The biggest pro for me was your workforce is like family, it's your squadron. So you kind of go through the highs and lows together. And with our current manning situation, it's kind of like an all hands on deck type situation where everybody's got to give 100% or else the squadron's going to sink. So I did that until my baby was born, and then there was no question I wasn't going back. So, any other questions about the ART job?
Not for me.
Any questions from the audience?
Jack, is it true to be a pilot in the squadron or
active duty as part of your art also, or can you be?
Yes. Yeah, you have to be an air crew in the squadron to be an art in the capacity that I filled. Not necessarily a pilot. There are different AFSCs that fill different roles in the squadron, but for my particular position, yes. Any other questions?
Stanley, you have, you represent an interesting aspect of aviation. Can you talk a little bit about what you do at flying the Caravan and that sort of thing, and how that juxtaposes with the full-time job as well?
So, yeah, again, I work for ForeFlight. My job is account management and sales, both to the military and to federal government, and then the accounts as well. This is my semi-retirement. I always wanted to get involved in aircraft, and I was 50 years old when I learned to fly. I was 57 when I got my first job making money flying. That was 10 years ago, you can do the math. So, but my career prior to 50 years ago was I was with IBM and Hewlett-Packard in sales for many years, and learned some things about some of the large enterprises and so forth. So, I just came to ForeFlight because I thought it'd be fun. I started out answering questions about how to reset passwords, things like that. And it just evolved. It was amazing. When I got there, we had about 6 or 8 of us, I think. And of course, everyone who knows about ForeFlight has taken off and done really, really well. But I think maybe to the point why I'm up here is there's jobs in aviation that are not flying jobs, that are cool jobs. And I would put my job in that category for ForeFlight. We do all kinds of cool things, and we need people like you that have knowledge that can help our customers learn how to use our products and help develop our products and our marketing and so forth and so on. So, but in addition to that, I still get to fly. So I'm pretty excited about that. Next week, just as an example, I'll be on duty with Part 135 cargo carrier on Monday and on Wednesday. So something I do kind of in the evening. I'm a standby pilot for them, so it's kind of nice if they don't need me to do anything. I can just sit there in the pilot's room and work on ForeFlight, do emails and presentations and so forth. So anyway, that's my story.
I have a follow-up, Stanley. How does one, so like let's say I want to go do that. You know what I mean? Because I just did a podcast, this gal, and she has this like amazing sales job where she like flies around and sells airplanes. And I'm going, this is like the coolest thing I've ever heard in my life. And I was sitting there and I was chatting with some UND soon-to-be graduates, and they were going, well, I got to go to the regional, and then I'm going to go to and that was their, like, that's all they could think of, right? And I said, well, have you ever even thought about the military? And it was like a bolt from the sky. Like, military? What's that? I'm going, yeah, you can go to the Guard, Reserve, you go active duty, whatever. And the guy, there's a guy and a gal, and he was like, I never even thought of that. And I go, yeah, okay, so, whoa, wait, there's timeout. There's like way more stuff than just the military and going to fly Part 121. And then we started chatting more and more and more, and then I met Mindy and we were talking, and then like the same question kind of goes for Nadia too, like how do you end up getting a job like what you guys do, which is, it combines something that's cool, ForeFlight and stuff like that, something that's totally different than what I do and Matt does and a lot of us do. How do you stumble into it? Do you meet the right people? How do you do that?
Well, luck and timing doesn't hurt.
Yeah, that's a true statement right there.
I think it's networking, doing what we're doing right here. It's just talking to people that are up here on the panel, expressing your interest, getting a little bit creative. I think it's just a matter of inquiring as to what's out there. I mean, there may be jobs out there that that people don't even know that they need you at this point. But if you get to know them, you can realize that actually the skills that you have might be applicable in their business. So that's where the networking comes in. I think that's a lot.
Yeah, I definitely agree with the networking. I would also add that I fly small airplanes also and have a little pits. And I can't tell you how many times I was just hanging out at the airport and just playing with my airplane, and I run into some interesting people who fly jets, and turns out, oh, next week I need a co-pilot. So that's kind of how you meet people, and it just goes from there.
That's I think that's like a cool, like, what other job is like, hey, can you work next week for me? You know, like, it doesn't exist. Like, you're not gonna get that if you're at Deloitte & Touche as an accountant. I always tell my friend, he was always amazed at this stuff. He's like, I don't get your line of work. I'm like, I don't either, man. It's just, it's kind of weird. And so going down that road, I have a bunch of questions that I think are a little bit more pointed. So you mind? Do you have? Okay. So I know there's some opinionated folks that are up here. Charlie and I had a conversation last night. Not saying he's opinionated. He's one of the funniest dudes I ever talked to. I told my wife, I'm like, I think I want to. I think I love Charlie. Like, the state of the industry is great. Everybody's hiring. Blah 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 blah. All that stuff's awesome, right? What about the other side of it? What do you guys for the 121 folks? Let's talk contract for a second. Where do we think? JC and I probably can. We're coming up on it real fast here. Where do you guys think we are as far as maturity of contracts compared to where they were in? Especially Charlie, you have exposure from pre 9/11, pre-recession era stuff to right now. Where are we as far as the contract rematurity as it is after everything's changed? And what do you think, Chris? What do you think? Like my 120, Bob, you've seen it all. What do you guys think? Where are we? Where are we going to go?
So I guess the alpha line is the union negotiates for me. No, but
yes.
I am not negotiating in public, for the record. This has been a crazy, 29 years for me. And I was telling the story last night to some people. When I started as an airline pilot in 1989, my gross salary was $900 a month for the first 6 months, $1,000 a month for the second 6 months. And raising a family, married, 2 kids, my daughter's here, making 20 grand a year. And I was saving aluminum cans from the airplanes and recycling them because I was making $7 a week doing that as an airline pilot, right? And now it's huge, way different. And one of the other things too, when I started in 1989, you look at all the airlines that were in business back then, and the difference between the pinnacle, the top paying airline and the worst paying airline were really big differences. Differences in benefits, differences in pay, difference in airplanes, difference in where things were going. If you look at the airlines now, in my opinion, with what it's consolidated down to, with top tier companies, United, American, Delta, FedEx, Southwest, UPS, pick your people that you have going on in there. I bet the difference in pay is less than 3% between the top and the bottom. And what we're seeing on our end of things is people are making decisions on where they want to go based on geography. Where do you want to live? And they're targeting companies based on where they want to be in the United States. Less so than years ago when it was you were targeting companies or you'd move from a company to a company because you were looking for better pay, better aircraft, better working conditions. And I think candidly the unions have helped with that because we've leveled the playing field, right? And what my B-Fund contribution is at United is going to be what Delta's is because we'll have a Me Too clause in the contract, right? So if I get something good, you guys are going to get something good, and we're going to piggyback and keep going. But it's never been as good as it is right now. I hope it stays that way, right? Because it's phenomenal, and it's a great time to be in the business. But it's wild. At United right now, we're in contract negotiations. Amendable dates in January. Scott Kirby wants us to cave on scope. My personal opinion is I hope we don't. If you don't know what scope is, you should start looking into those types of things.
I want to, everybody who is in a 121 community will piggyback on that. If you don't know what scope is, you need to learn what scope is. And we're not going to sit here and explain it in detail because it's pretty deep.
It would take a while, but it's critical. And we would love, as a United pilot, I'm sure that the other United pilots up here would, I'd love to see 100-seat jets at mainline, right? Because if they're, and I love what Delta's doing with the CS series, they're putting them on mainline, right? And that's good. That's good for Delta mainline. That's good for Delta jobs. It's good for the seniority list, et cetera. And I hope that we see that at United. I have zero idea what's going to happen with that, right? I don't know if it's going to come. I don't know if it's not going to come. But anyway, times are good right now.
That was like the most nailed answer. Like that was too. That was like you basically said everything that I was kind of thinking. My opinion is pretty much the same thing.
So, well, one thing we mentioned, and Charlie just mentioned this, is times are really good right now for the airline industry and just aviation in general. Bob, from your experience, can you answer? It's an easy question, but has it always been this way, or what does it look like when it's not like this? And do you think it'll always be this way again?
It hasn't always been this way. I got out of the Air Force in 1981. We were just, if you're not familiar with history, there was a thing called regulation. Deregulation occurred under the Carter administration in the late 70s, and airlines had their guaranteed routes, guaranteed tariffs, guaranteed fares, and they were almost like regionals. We had the flag carriers, which were Pan Am and TWA. They weren't allowed to fly domestically. And you had Eastern Airlines that had the East Coast. You had Delta. You had that worked Atlanta and up and down. And then they had some stuff that went back and forth across the country. You had Braniff, which was centered in Dallas. You get the picture. They were all basically chunks of the pie. And then all of a sudden in the late 70s, Alfred Kahn, I believe his name was, talked President Carter into deregulating the industry. And all of a sudden everything went awry. And then we went through a period of high inflation because these airlines had guaranteed cash flow. They were buying equipment at exorbitant interest rates, and that's what happened to. I was at Southwest for a year, and all my neighbors were Braniff pilots, and all of a sudden, one day in '82, the airline shut down overnight. And that made a big impact on my outlook on how am I going to take care of my family, how am I going to live in this industry. But to answer your question, the ebb and flows. Unfortunately, labor and management, they never, the cart doesn't roll at the same RPM. And everybody, they want to get the most they can. And my question was, to my buddies that flew for the legacies, was can your management handle it? I had a 38 IP in my squadron that was working for Delta. I ran into him at a Walmart or something, and he was telling me about in the early 90s how good his contract was. And then next thing I know, a couple years later, they're declaring bankruptcy. So to answer the question, it's been a sine wave, up and down. Whereas this little carrier that I joined in Dallas, and I was lucky, it was timing. I flew the 7-3 in the Air Force, and I walked right into this little airline. And we had a founder by the name of Herb Kelleher that said, okay, pilots, you're going to work 20% harder for 20% less pay. In exchange, you're never going to be furloughed, and you might have a chance of retiring with a little bit of money in your pocket. And I said, I'm on. And then I was subsequently hired by Piedmont a few months later, and I went over there, listened to their spiel, and I called the chief pilot on Thursday and said I wasn't going to be there on Monday. It was the hardest decision of my life. But I stayed at Southwest, and that graph that they showed earlier, it looked kind of like our graph for the last 40 years. I guess I've answered the question.
Oh, no, that's awesome.
Thanks, Bob. So I also want to ask you, Chris, you have a pretty unique set of experiences now, and I know you'll talk about it later, but can you just mention what it's like to be you recently were designated as a DPE with the FAA. Can you just talk a little bit about what that experience was and how you even got to that? And for those of you who may not even know what that is, can you describe it?
So First of all, I'm living proof that military pilots can't spell far aim. Calm down for a minute. We started Military ATP about 4 years ago, and we wanted to become a part of 141 schools so that we could help folks out that wanted to use the GI Bill. Unfortunately, part of that is I get to go take a check ride with the FAA for every course and every airplane we have once a year, so they got to know me. We got to a point with the size of our courses we were running that we didn't have enough evaluators, so I applied to become an evaluator, and the FAA actually thanked me, which is a bit crazy. So the process is pretty easy. It's the being qualified to apply that's the hard part. It's simply to go down to Oklahoma City where they cram 30 minutes of academics into 4 days. And then it's a relatively rigorous process of actually giving the FAA check rides, going out to the proverbial lion's den with an airplane and putting two FAA inspectors in an airplane with you and giving them check rides. So you're giving one of them a check ride while the other guy's giving you a check ride. And you do that for every course that you'll be testing in. I only applied to become a multi-engine ATP evaluator, and when they sent my paperwork back, they gave me every fixed wing rating you can get except single engine ATP, and that's because I don't have a single engine ATP. So I'm still plugging my way through taking all those check rides. You'd be surprised how hard it is to get someone to agree to be observed by the FAA. So I'll take a check ride with you, with the FAA watching me. The funny thing about the FAA and my own perceived internal conflict here is when they designated me as an evaluator, I told the FAA I was going to do check rides for free. And they said I couldn't do that because it's a conflict of interest. And I asked them to explain that. And they said, well, people will sign up for your course just to get a free check ride. And I told them I was sold out for like the next 8 months anyway. And they said, yeah, that's still a conflict of interest. So I can train you and I can fly with you and I can charge you to give you a check ride, and that's not a conflict of interest. So some of the things the FAA says and does are certainly counter-cultural to what we grew up with. But there's that. I'm not sure if I answered your question, Matt.
No, that's good.
Matt, I'd like to toss this back to the audience. Last night was great networking. It was awesome. And there were a ton of good questions last night. So I know there's still a ton of good questions sitting out there. So please, this is your chance. Bring it to us. There's a breadth of experience up here.
There it is.
Hey, I'm active duty cooper in Miami right now.
And Matt, you were alluding to developing the network and all the programs you guys are working on, and I was just sitting here thinking about, like you said, the breadth of experience. Are you guys planning on doing any sort of like mentoring program where you have a pool of, senior, mid-career guys that are kind of standing by, and as new members join the network, they can sign up for a mentoring partner to kind of help them find their path if they're wanting to go civilian or military or things like that. I thought that might be something we could develop, kind of a one-on-one mentoring program.
No, absolutely. I think that's a great idea. One of the things, whenever Adam and I get together, we sit down, we have a beer or 6, and we try to figure out like where this thing is going, because we kind of a little bit have the tiger by the tail here. It's growing so fast and turning into something that legitimately can make a difference. And so one of the things we're focusing on right now is building up TPN and turning it into a viable entity that can exist without us. Because we're not going to be around forever. We're working on things like scholarships for younger pilots and getting them interested. Pre-flight camp, our friend Liz Duca, if you've listened to the podcast at all, she's an Air Force pilot who has since separated, and she flies for Hawaiian Airlines right now, and she went and started a nonprofit, a camp for girls 11 to 13. Her problem with aviation is only something like 6% of aviation is women. And
It's smaller than that.
And only 4% of professional aviation is women. And it might even be smaller than that. Yeah. Which is terrible. And so Liz decided to do something about it. And what she did is she started what's called Pre-Flight Camp. And it's a nonprofit organization. And it's a week-and-a-half long camp for girls ages 11 to 14. And the only purpose of that camp is to teach girls that aviation is an option for them. And so, unfortunately, she's on her honeymoon right now, and she couldn't be here today, but she was supposed to be on this panel today and tell you about what she's doing, because it's pretty amazing.
So, to add on to that, Matt and I have talked a lot about this mentorship stuff. Like, for the last 4, maybe 3 years, I think we started. Matt, so when I started the Pilot Network, it was a thing to see how many letters of rec I could get at FedEx. I'm not a FedEx, so that didn't work very well. So the Pilot Network's been a huge failure for me. However, one of the side effects of all of that was it was a totally informal mentoring process. Ask and thou shalt receive. I seeded the group with a couple of questions. If you have the time, scroll back. It'll take you about 3 full days of scrolling to get all the way to the beginning. We've tried and we've never gotten there, Matt and I. So like, how many licks does it take to get to the center of the Tootsie Pop? No one in the world will never know. With that, we realized that there's 2 of us and a third kind of helper guy, Jason, and that's like it. And we don't have the bandwidth to create this mentorship network. We just don't have it. So what we did and what we're trying to do more of is this partnership idea. There's all these other people out there who do this that are experts at it. Because Matt and I are truly not experts at creating a hierarchy of how the mentors would get together. I mean, that would be like, if we just did that, that's all we would do. But there's people out there who do that. And there's a group called the Professional Pilot of Tomorrow. And they do that. And we've been kind of talking to them recently. We talked to them once before. They were smaller, it wasn't going to work. But now it's like starting to get some legs. So we're hoping that is the future of us working with people to make that stuff happen. So that is on the docket. We've talked about that.
Bottom line, we love the idea, and we'll talk about it. Jessica, did you want to expand on what you were talking about there for a second?
Well, I think it's probably well known that the percentage of women in commercial aviation is very small. The numbers you're talking about are probably people who have licenses. Is that what you're aware of as well, around the 5 or 6% mark? Women who have licenses. But the percentage of women in commercial aviation, professional piloting, the number that's thrown out a lot is 5%. It's probably lower than that 4.5. Is that what you're aware of? Yeah, 4.5% throughout the 121 world. And every airline is slightly different in the plus or minus 1% range there. A lot of the majors are doing some very targeted, specific recruiting for minorities of every flavor, including women, because every airline is trying to increase those numbers. There's a huge workforce out there that's available. We're talking about a pilot shortage, and you've got an entire demographic that's just left out, basically. So if you have daughters or friends or any women, really, from small ages all the way up, there's a good opportunity to get them involved in aviation. There are lots of events sponsored through lots of organizations, Girls in Aviation Days. There's a grassroots women's aviation group. Are you a member of FAST? No? I'll talk to you offline. There's a grassroots underground organization of professional female aviators that started a few years ago, also on Facebook, called FAST. Female aviators sticking together. It's a lot like this, but it's very specific to help the women, doing things like mentoring. There's a convention coming, scholarships, lots of nonprofit stuff to get young girls especially involved and aware that aviation is an option. Does that answer your question?
No, that's great. I think it's just something that we need to talk about. Nadia, do you have something to add?
Just to add to that and kind of to illustrate the point about how much this is needed, if you type the words female pilot into Google, it gives you the suggestions, and it says people also ask this. Number 1 answer is, what do you call a female pilot? Yeah, pilot. Right? That is what people ask.
Captain, right? So,
any other questions?
Yeah, absolutely. There you go.
So, kind of piggybacking on what Matt was saying, is that this is all sunshine and rainbows, this pilot's market right now, and everything is great for us, but as Mr. Ryan was saying, there's been a sine wave, right? So not to be a buzzkill, but if we're at the crest of the sine wave, what, in the opinion of the experienced panel, is the most likely threat that's going to bring about the next trough? And then how many years would it take in the top tier for us to get out of, if we're getting out and transitioning about 2 to 3 years, how many years would it take of seniority to protect against such threats?
Since I'm holding microphone. You know, the economy's obviously just rolling right now, but if you look at some of the naysayers on the economy, they keep saying we're on the precipice of another big fall, you know, that it's coming, it's coming. Whether it is or not, I don't know. But just in terms of likelihood, that versus a terrorist event versus oil prices spiking, which would be related to economy, I think the economy is the #1 threat, if you will, to the sine wave. That's just my personal gut feeling.
I don't have a crystal ball, but yes, life is a sine wave. It goes up and down. The thing is the demographic has changed. Air travel has gone from the regulated period I talked about earlier to a point where, yeah, we're Greyhound buses now in the sky, and our society is hooked on flying. And you can get cheap tickets. And what's cool about it is you all are in a window of opportunity that has never existed. My entire career, they talked about the pilot shortage. I really think it is upon us now because the cockpits are being built at Boeing and Airbus. All over the world, there's a demand for pilots. The military is just not putting them out. You all mostly military audience. I think you're in a good position. However, once you get on with that airline, seniority is everything. So those are things you need to put into your decision-making process. Figure out where am I going to sit, where am I going to live, is it going to be good for my family, do I really want to do this? My career was golden. I have very dear friends that had their contracts abrogated, their companies went out from under them, their retirement plans were taken away. So there's a lot of wreckage along the way. It's just, but you know what? I had to fly airplanes or work in a cubicle. I think I'd probably kill myself because this beats working for a living. It really is. Flying airplanes is the best. It really is. And y'all, I'm preaching to the choir here, so you wouldn't be in this room if you didn't agree with me. So it's worth it. Go for it. You follow your gut, follow your heart. Southwest heart thing. Follow your heart and go where you feel that you're comfortable. And you of all generations have the ability to pick airlines. Yeah, I know it sounds funny right now, but they're all hiring, and wasn't always that way.
So I have one more quick question to the younger FOs, specifically JC, Dan, and Mark, because you guys we're all kind of in the same boat, right? Or under the 5-year mark. I guess Chris, you're kind of under the 5-year mark too, so we're. You're just the older, younger version. Yeah. So like, what's your? I think this question comes up a lot. It's hard to answer on the online forum. I would say a day in a life, but that doesn't really make sense. So a month in a life, because I mean, we all talk about it in the cockpit. It's the grind. Bid, award, repeat. Bid, award, repeat. A lot of people don't know what that means. So what's your month like as an airline pilot? And then specifically, 3 of you have side hustles, and then JC's got a union job too. So you're not just doing the airline thing. So what's Dan, if you want to start on your opinion.
Just to tag on that other question, if you noticed, a lot of us have other side hustles. I started off just a transition military guy, got picked up into the airline, and then shortly after I hurt my back and I noticed I had all my eggs in one basket. I was one injury away from losing what I worked, my life work. We have a guy we know, dear in heart to him.
Yeah.
Poked his eye out, changing a gasket, and he lost his eye. He's just got his FAA exemption to be a monocular pilot. He'll never fly in the Air Force again. So you'll see everybody here has another side hustle. So I would recommend after you do that transition and get the job you want, start looking at your side hustle because you're going to be bored.
You can move forward.
Where you go on vacations.
That's a great hustle too. That's a great.
You gotta pay for those vacations, you gotta get your customers.
That's why you go to Southwest.
I'm on vacation right now, by the way.
As far as me, just speaking, again, these are my opinions, disclaimer, has nothing to do with American. I'm approaching my 5th year, and it's all based on seniority, just like Mr. Ryan said, it's all based on seniority. So I'm top 40% on the Airbus. When I get a good schedule, I work Wednesday to Friday, Tuesday to Thursday, protect my weekends so I can spend time with the girls, and then because I have my military duty on the side. About 3rd year pay, you start making more than what you did on active duty as an active duty major, if that's where you're transitioning out. 4th year pay, and then it skyrockets, and that's pretty much for every airline after that. But I'm working a whole lot less, making a whole lot more, and my first day in the cockpit beats my best day in the office for sure.
So, typical month at Southwest is I'm 3.5 years in. I just crested the 50% among FOs in Dallas, so that's a big milestone for me. Really happy. Anyway, I bid a line, and it usually produces a schedule that has me doing either a 3-day or a 4-day trip each week on average. So about 12 to 15 days a month is what I'll be scheduled for, with 3 to 4 days off in between. There's, at least at Southwest, there's tremendous flexibility to move things around as I need to make things happen if I have a day I need off. There's also a tremendous opportunity to pick up extra flying if I want to. Not required by any means, but, and then give it away, that's right, for premium. But, so there's just a lot more flexibility than I ever had coming from the military. You know, the military, the scheduler builds your schedule and that's it, and it takes an act of Congress to get out of that schedule. Unless, of course, they want to pile queep on you, and then they'll take you off the board in a second to go do the queep. No, but really, what Dan was saying is so true. I've never had so much time off in my life, and it's awesome to imagine all the ways you can fill that time, either with your family, with side jobs, or hobbies, or whatever it is.
Yeah, so for me, and this is a great example right now, just where actually our bids are due today at 1,800 for December.
Thank you for reminding me. Thank you. Yeah. Whoops.
So, seniority. Excuse me. Seniority is life, we've all heard it, and that's why I live in Tampa and I don't commute to Atlanta, I commute to New York. You know, if right now I'm coming up on my 4-year point next month, and like you were saying, like Dan was saying, 40% fly in Atlanta, and New York I'm 14%. And so coming up on December, looking at the bid pack, it's pretty ugly. And for me to get from, let's say I want to be off on the 22nd for the rest of the month, yeah, I'm going to be able to do it, but there's no way I could have done it in Atlanta. So, you know, but it's quality of life. You know, if you want to live in Dallas, I'm going to have to commute either way. So my choice is, yeah, I'll commute an extra hour and 10 minutes up to New York. Yeah, I'll have to deal with a little bit more weather and phenomena, maybe have to go up. Stay at my sister's in Jersey once or twice during the winter time for a storm, but that's okay. I'll take that, and then the rest of the year I know that I'm going to get all the days off I want, vacations I want, and so forth. But it is balanced. As far as doing other jobs, like I said before, I figured out pretty early on, about 1.5 years into it, that I can go do a little bit of what I used to do in the Air Force, some safety, some standards work, and now that's an extra, you know, couple nights of the month that I'm at home, so I can do some of this work at home remote, and that's, you know, 2 days of pay that I don't have to fly. I can get paid doing other stuff. So there's a plethora of options out there. Just take your time, you know, as you get the job, think about it. But the things that we're talking about up here, this is the ultimate platform. Just last night, today, throughout, write down numbers. I mean, like you were talking about mentoring. Hey, we're here, let's exchange information, mentor. You guys can mentor, piggyback earlier. If you know somebody that has a plane, you go fly with them. Hey, invite some younger folks, you know, your cousins, families, whoever, friends. And when you interview and the airlines hear that, they're gonna love it. all about. And then the threat, somebody asked about the threat. One thing you've probably already seen, it's on the horizon, is single pilot aircraft, with passengers, no pilot-less aircraft. Yeah, I know it's kind of early, and you're like, really, that might not be the next threat, but it's already peeking inside your head.
Yeah, I tend to agree, especially for those of you guys who are still like, that discussion happens all the time, right? Oh, here we go again, the unmanned cockpit, or unpersoned cockpit, the pilotless aircraft. Oh, yeah. That, honestly though, I think a bigger threat, and that's much more the closest alligator to the world, and I agree, is the single pilot operation. That one scares me a little bit more. Only because it would save, there would be a monetary savings there. It would slow, and to me, it's not the money saving. This is my personal opinion, right? Like, I don't know anything, but single pilot operation wouldn't slow the airline down. That's the money savings. Like, who cares how much money they actually save in labor? The airline would continue to run hyper efficiently. And for those of you, and Bob he alluded to it many times, like, efficiency has changed so much, even in the last 15 years. My airline is hyper efficient compared to what they were. And we have an IROP that's a regular operation, and the system goes down, it comes back up so fast, and they have people back to where they're supposed to be within 48 to 72 hours. Years ago, that never happened. You just didn't get to go where you're going anymore. It was over. Like, your trip was done. That was the end. So that doesn't happen. And if the airline hits a point where this pilot shortage is actually a real thing, instead of like being said, in the past it was said, and they can find a way to not slow down the efficient operation, that to me is like one of the biggest threats that are out there. And it was mentioned before by Charlie, scope. Scope will eat our jobs alive if we don't watch it. Every airline, Southwest is the best scope on the planet. You guys are the scope kings. Like, that's what you do, and I wish we had that. So
You just brought to mind another threat that's out there that happened, I'm sure, during Bob's time and maybe Charlie's time. The age 65 rule has been under consideration to bump that out to 67 or whatever. Those who were in the industry, I wasn't at the time, that really caused a ripple, not in terms of people getting furloughed, but just a slowdown in upgrade time, which has a serious impact on a pilot's career. So that's another looming threat to the industry out there. I don't call it a threat, it's good for the industry as a whole. It's not good for you as a junior pilot as a whole.
Any other questions? Yes.
Going back to that seniority, I've heard stories told of this. I don't know if it's actually a thing, but are any of you aware in your airlines of people who have decided to become professional first officers, and they climb to the top of the rank, like, I'm just going to stay here?
My entire airplane, that's what the 330 does. They'll sit in the right seat until their hand is cold down.
Southwest, we see that a lot. A lot of people pass up that upgrade because you can live a quality of life as a senior first officer at Southwest that is every bit as good or better than being a junior captain at other airlines. And I'm talking about pay, and I'm talking about time off and the ability to just manage your life and have all your holidays off and all the vacation time you want and still make great money. So people do pass up that upgrade.
But that is base specific. That seniority that allows you to do that is very base driven across our system at Southwest. We used to have an up or out clause where you were required to upgrade. Was that 2 contracts ago that we got rid of it? So it required you to upgrade. You could pass on your upgrade once or twice. I think it was 3 times. If you didn't upgrade or you couldn't make it through, you lost your job. That doesn't make a whole lot of sense in the reality that we live in today, where we're all fighting to put pilots in seats. So the up or out is gone. You can homestead in the right seat if you choose to do that. And people will argue all day long that you can make as much money in the right seat as you will as a captain, and I'll tell you that that's true. You can do it with seniority. You can pick up that Southwest premium pay, but you'll be working more days for that money. where I'll make that money working 12 days a month, you'll work 22 days a month and make that money. So it's possible.
Is it looked down upon people that make that?
Not at all. Only by the people who are junior to you who are anything. So,
Yes, it is.
and I'm one of those people, I was 10 years Orlando based before I upgraded and was always working weekends and holidays because we had 65 people homesteading on the top of the list. So I've been a captain for 3.5 years. I'm back in Orlando now as a very junior captain. I still, as an FO, would not get weekends or holidays off. So it's very base specific, the seniority of the base. So the people junior to you will be mad.
And in our airline, not only base specific, but aircraft specific, because we see a lot of those guys go super senior as wide body FOs. And last year, I had a great opportunity. I went and flew the 747 at United. I downbid to FO. 28 years, and I'm bidding 25% in the right seat in the base. And because there are guys that have been on that airplane in the right seat and every one of the guys that was a first officer senior, you can hold captain in the system on a narrow body airplane. So most of them could hold wide body captain spots, and they choose not to because the quality of life is fantastic. It's the sweet spot. It's right where they want to be. They're making the money that's sustainable for them, that meets all of their objectives. Junior FO, well, even senior FOs. Just yesterday, I bumped into a friend of mine. He's a little bit senior to me. He's the #2 FO in Houston on the 737. Chris works hard. He picks up the premium pay. He's the guy that's tethered to his phone when he's going through. He's pulling $50K a month over the summer. Wow. So yeah, there's in it, and good on him. I don't want to work that hard.
I actually have a funny story about that. I was on a 4-day trip with a very junior captain. He was so junior, in fact, he was sitting field standby. He was very unhappy about that. And about halfway through the pairing, we exchanged email addresses. His email address was B777 Bunky for life. And I said, what happened? And he said, well, I wanted to see the snapshot, so I put in a bid. I got drunk, I forgot about it. I woke up the next morning to an email and said, congratulations, Captain. And there's no going back for 2 years, so I was field standby for 2 years.
I flew with a guy like that too, on the little bus. He said I threw the turd in the punch bowl, and he goes, and I forgot to pull it out. I said, so are you disappointed with the decision? And he goes, oh, 100%. See, that's what he wanted. He wanted to be a 330 FO forever, and he literally forgot that he had a bid. We had a guy in my guard who accidentally bid out of a 330 right seat to go to the 320 right seat. Accidentally, and he's a commuter, and he goes, Joe, he like freaked out in the unit. He's like, what do I do? What do I do? And I'm like, you're screwed. It's done. Well, he actually worked out a deal. He's going to be a seniority-less instructor down in Atlanta on 320, and he's been rationalizing it as pilots do. No, I made the right decision. This is definitely. So yeah, it's a good deal, man. Like, you can tell me that. I go, we'll talk in 2 years when your time comes back up and you can go to the 330 again and you'll bid out of the. But yeah, so that's the thing. Like, that's the other great part about the airline job in and of itself is there's 14,000 people at Delta and there's 14,000 different ways of doing stuff. And so you're kind of like an independent contractor in a way because you can basically pick and choose what you want to do. Your first year, that's not going to happen. But as you gain seniority, you start to pick and choose your lifestyle. And if you want to get paid a lot of money, if you don't want to, it doesn't matter. You do whatever you want to do. And then, like I said last night to a couple guys, your worst day at your airline is your first day, and then it just gets better every day after that. And for most of us, our military career, our best day was the day we got our wings, and then it just kind of got a little bit worse. Inversely proportionate.
I had one question, pretty much for the whole panel, actually 2 parts. I'd like to go back to the single pilot and figure out what the panel thinks about your opinions. And then,
No.
Okay. And then going the supply and demand that we're talking about, the increased pay, we keep hearing about the pilot shortage. I know we got a lot of, Part 121 may have a lot of insight on the hiring and the outlook and the retirements. Just looking for your guys' insight on that.
I'll hit it from my aspect. From my former position in what I did at United, when we started off the street hiring in 2012, there were probably, when we announced that we were going to hire, we went to about 13,000 active applicants. And because nobody had hired in 5 years. United had pilots on furlough, Continental had pilots on furlough, age 65 happened, and that really was, and that's a fabulous thing for a threat that I had kind of forgotten about, because, boy, that was really a kick in the groin in terms of progression within the company. But the pilot shortage is real at the regionals right now. And some of you guys, as you're transitioning out, I tell my clients when I talk to them, listen, if the majors aren't biting right now, you need to keep the recency of experience going, but use the regional as your break glass in case of emergency. Because be careful what you wish for. Because a lot of times, and I've had guys call and I said, you know, hey, I put in an app with XYZ regional airline. And I'm like, and I said, yeah, I've heard that they can call you back probably within a day. He said, no, it was 15 minutes. Because they're literally sitting, watching airline apps from the user end, waiting, bling, it pops into the system. Oh shit, I got a live one. Is he on parole? No. Right. Can he travel out of state? But it's I think, and again, it's my opinion, and that's what they all are. But I've told this story a lot of times before too. I think at some point it's going to get to the, you know, Mr. Venema, I see you have 3 DUIs. We value consistency at United. But you got to look at the pilot need not only locally but globally, right? And you read the articles and you look at what the need for pilots are in Asia, for example. And if any of you have flown there and you look at where the need is globally, I think it's real, right? And so, in that pressure though, that flips to that and says, okay, if I'm an airline manager, I'm interested in finding ways to mitigate pilot things. And one of my strategies might be to go out and invest money in STEM and go into elementary schools and junior high schools and high schools and get people interested in that and set up with collegiate programs. That's my front game. But it wouldn't surprise me at all if there's people on the back game looking to figure out how can I do this with less pilots, not with more pilots. And that's a very real technology threat as you look at it. But the future is bright as you look at it right now. I tell people all the time, I wish I had a crystal ball and I wish I could tell people when things were going to happen. I just tell them it's not an if, it's a when game. And you have to be prepared for when the when happens, because the when's going to happen. You have a skill that is in demand. And it's just unfortunate, it takes some time to get to that, to get that phone to ring.
And also for the retirements, if you're looking and you think that's a factor, it is definitely a factor. And if you're riding the fence, you got 2 CJOs from 2 majors, and you're looking at the movement, definitely look at that. I mean, you have access to it. If not, ask anybody who's working for that airline. The union has it, and I'm sure it's out on you can Google it, figure it out somehow. But yeah, the retirements list, the numbers are out there, and usually those are the set mandatory retirements. Obviously, a lot of early retirements as well. So yeah, take that into consideration and talking about seniority and how quick you're going to attain that.
So this, as of course pilots do, we get rolling and then we don't stop. Like, we could probably talk about this particular subject the rest of the day, and then we'd have to go bring like kegs of beer in here. So, first of all, all right, I like your attitude. Let's hear it for, I mean, this is a panel and you can now talk to the rest of the day and breaks and whatever, and exchange information like JC said. You have specific relationship ideas that, like, if you want to be a realtor, Dan might be your guy. Or you want to write a book, there's one that's sitting right up here who might do that and be able to help you out. Whatever your ideas are, you have people that now this is what networking is all about. So let's give it up for our panel. But being candid with what you really feel this industry is going through. We have a little, I guess, parting gift, whatever you want to call it. Plane form, one of our first, so TPN had the sponsor #1 original partner. Gavin, he couldn't be here. He makes those cool bottles that some of you guys got yesterday. And Gavin believed in us, so he said, here's a couple bucks. And then he did really well by having a huge order first through. So we figured we owe it to them to give them a cool little bottle opener. So check them out. If I think we may have some more. I don't know. We'll talk about that later, I guess. But again, thank you very much, panel, for joining us. And we'll take a little break, and we'll come back here in about 5 to 10 minutes.